So the original title of this webinar was Optimizing Your Go-to-Market Investments Across the Funnel. You see a different title up here just because I think it's maybe a little bit more accurate to what we're going to talk about, which is properly balancing your go-to-market investments along the entire funnel. If you think about CFO's role, CFO is a portfolio manager per se, right? Responsible for ensuring that a company's investments across numerous functional areas and initiatives are arranged to deliver maximum growth, maximum profitability. This is a core aspect of the value creation responsibility of a strategic CFO, as well as VC and PE value creation partners. Before we get started, just a little bit on Scale Matters. We've seen firsthand that businesses with really good data, analytics, and models around their go-to-market function are able to deliver outsized growth and efficiency. And they're able to do that because they can operate at a level of precision and kind of intentionality that companies without such a data posture just can't do. And for many years in and around kind of the VC and PE-backed ecosystem, we've also recognized that most companies really struggle. Most companies at these stages where these investors operate really struggle to get their go-to-market data house in order. And as a result, their leadership team is really missing an important tool to drive efficient growth. We like to say, your crummy CRM data isn't the reason you aren't growing fast, but it is the reason you can't figure out how to grow faster. There's so much expensive capital, so much precious runway is wasted by growth in mid-market companies because they don't have the data to run their go-to-market business, go-to-market function with precision. So we started Scale Matters 6 years ago, really just to help companies, help these stage companies transform their go-to-market data such that analytics can be performed and models can be built that legitimately help the leadership teams improve their outcomes. So that's quick advertisement for Scale Matters. Today's expectation for strategic CFOs is that they are active contributors to value creation. In fact, in many cases, the expectation is that they are the leading proponent of value creation within their executive team, as opposed to someone that simply reports the numbers. As we stated earlier, we're going to talk today about making sure the investments you make across the go-to-market funnel are in balance. And that is a key part of any value creation strategy, as it's critical for maximum go-to-market efficiency. We're going to start the session just by giving some context, reintroducing the SaaS growth model and the associated value creation levers so that it sort of frames the discussion. Then we'll define what we mean by funnel resource balance and why it's so important. And then we'll walk through some steps you can use to make sure you have your resources balanced across the funnel. So we're going to start by reviewing the relevance of data to value creation. There are really three use cases for go-to-market data and analytics. First is to meet board and or investor requirements. Think of this really as a compliance play, right? Next is value creation, which is using the insights that are gleaned from data to take actions which improve business performance. And then finally is exit readiness or investment readiness, which is basically ensuring you have the necessary data in order to allow an investor to efficiently and positively evaluate the business. Today's topic on resource balancing is core to value creation. On this slide now, we provide a fairly simplistic visualization of a typical SaaS growth model. The essence of a subscription growth model is that you have some starting ARR, right, at the beginning of a period. You add to that ARR from new logos that are acquired during the period, and those new logos are acquired, via some kind of new logo funnel process, which is how we convert leads into new customers and new ARR. The number of deals times the average ARR of those deals yields the new logo ARR that is added to the starting ARR. Then we subtract the ARR from any customers who either churned or reduced contract size during the period. And then we add back any increase that we got from existing customers because of upsell, cross-sell, or expansion opportunities. The effect of all of these results in ending ARR for the period, which obviously, hopefully, is meaningfully greater than starting ARR. But maybe your business isn't a subscription model. Maybe every year you're starting from scratch, and to grow, you need to do more than you did last year. For these more traditional businesses, your growth model may very likely be just the new logo funnel. Though if you make something that folks could conceivably buy more than once, you might also have some separate motion and funnel for mining new opportunities within your current or former customers. For this session, we're going to use the SaaS growth model to explain our framework, but it really applies to any business model. Right? Understanding these simple building blocks of the funnel or of the model helps us to kind of bucket a defined set of actions that we can actually take to improve performance, what we call value creation levers. The first actions you can take are to drive an increase in the number of leads entering the new logo funnel that actually match your ICP, right? And not a lot of value in producing a whole bunch of leads that aren't good fit for you, right? So on a previous webinar, we actually talked about how to use go-to-market data and LTV CAC calculations to really identify your ICP. If you missed that, you can find a recorded version on our website. The second set of actions you can take are to balance your resource capacity across the top, middle, and bottom of funnel. This is the subject of today's session, so I'm not going to go any deeper on it on this slide. The third growth lever is to increase the conversion rates throughout the new logo funnel. Or you can potentially take actions that increase your average deal size. Or you could take actions that reduce churn and downsell. And finally, you can take actions that could increase upsell, cross-sell, and expansions. Now, the importance of data when it comes to value creation is to help inform us or inform leadership teams, right? So that we can choose which set of actions we're going to take that we think are going to have the most impact versus some other set of actions that may not be helpful. So again, today's focus is on the second of these levers, the one in red. We've previously done sessions on the first and third, which you can also find the recordings of on our website, and we'll be covering the fourth through sixth in later sessions. So now let's dig deeper on the second value creation lever, funnel resource balance. To understand resource balance, let's just consider a very simple new logo funnel here. Leads are generated through kind of any number of strategies, channels, or campaigns. Then we manage to get some of those leads scheduled for an initial discovery and qualification call. Some portion of those scheduled calls actually takes place. Others get ghosted. And after we have the ones that we complete, we're able to decide whether this is a legitimate pipeline opportunity, in which case we create pipeline opportunities. And then we run our sales playbooks to try to convert those pipeline opportunities into new customers. Now, for purposes of resource balancing, next slide, Tim. We like to group these funnel stages into top of funnel, where we're generating the leads, middle of funnel, where we're attempting to do discovery and qualify the leads into pipeline opportunities, and finally, bottom of funnel, where we're actively working our sales playbooks to turn these opportunities into customers. The top of funnel activities are typically the domain of marketing or partner programs, along with cold prospecting, which could be either or both of SDRs and AEs. Once leads are generated, the process of trying to meet with them to do discovery qualification is, often done by SDRs, BDRs, or in other companies, it's done by the AEs. And then the bottom of funnel selling activities are almost always handled by AEs, account executives. So these are the resources that we're talking about, right? These are the resources that we want to make sure are in balance. And when they are in balance, even though each of these steps has some nominal conversion rates, when they're in balance, the resources are never idle. Now, let's look at what happens when these resources are not in balance. In this first scenario, we look at a case where there are excess top of funnel resources relative to the resources further down the funnel. Maybe your marketing programs, are just hitting on all cylinders, or maybe one or two of the channel partners are finding some vibrant cross-sell opportunities to their existing bases. Obviously, these are problems we'd all love to have. And while we have seen these top-heavy scenarios in real life, they aren't super common. But the problem with these top-heavy scenarios is that there aren't sufficient resources to adequately work the leads. So they just leak out of the funnel and decay and drop to the ground, right? So it's a complete waste of money to generate these leads that you don't have enough resources to work. Now, for comparison, let's consider the case where you have too many salespeople, meaning you are bottom of funnel heavy in terms of resource allocation. Unfortunately, this scenario is super common in growth and mid-market companies, especially VC-backed companies, because too many people are still holding on kind of to an outdated belief that sales headcount is the primary driver of bookings. And, that was true years ago, especially in enterprise sales, where the size and relevance of one's Rolodex was critical because top of funnel was all driven by prospecting. But most businesses just aren't that way anymore. And, what they say, 60 to 80% of a purchase process is already completed before buyers engage with sales folks. So in any case, there are a couple of sure tell symptoms of this bottom heavy scenario. First, sales is always complaining about not enough leads. And secondly, the best salespeople begin to jump ship because there isn't enough top of funnel support for them to make or crush their number. So now, as these dashed lines on this next slide infer, having too many salespeople won't actually increase the amount of bookings because you are still constrained by the number of opportunities produced by the top and middle of funnel resources, combined with the nominal conversion dynamics of your process. So in reality, you're just wasting money on excess salespeople. But the impact of a bottom-heavy resource allocation is actually much worse than simply wasting money on excess salespeople. As I said before, your better salespeople will eventually jump ship because of the lack of top of funnel. And that will have the positive effect of actually bringing the resources back in balance, which is what we're showing with the gray sides here. However, while they're back in balance, what you're left with, back up to the other side, Tim, what you're left with are less capable salespeople because your good ones all jumped ship. So now your bottom of funnel conversion rates will suffer. That's what these dashed red lines are trying to show, that in the end, you actually are going to waste a lot of money on too many salespeople, but that's going to be solved by the good guys leaving or good people leaving, and you're going to be left with less capable salespeople, which will cause your conversion rates to shrink, and therefore you're actually going to get less revenue. As a side note, we often see companies that are bottom heavy try to solve this by actually telling the sales team, okay, yeah, there aren't enough leads from marketing or whatever, so you have to generate 40% of your pipeline through your own prospecting efforts. Well, that sounds great, but the problem is that outbound prospecting just isn't efficient for many business types. And it typically is way less efficient than other top of funnel strategies you could do. So the problem with this approach is, rather than shrinking the sales team and taking those diverted resources and putting it into top of funnel in order to get balance, they hold on to the sales team and tell them to do something very inefficient, which is prospect. So you end up, it's just, I see this time and again, and it's not an effective way to deal with this issue. So summary impact of imbalance. So hopefully we've made it very clear that not having your resources balanced across your funnel is, the first thing is you waste a whole bunch of money. You're either wasting it on leads that nobody can work, you're wasting it on salespeople that don't have enough leads, whatever. But worse than the waste is the negative effect on bookings if you're too heavy in the middle of funnel or the bottom of funnel where it's very people intensive. And that's because your better people will depart for greener pastures because you're not giving them the support to make their number. As a result, conversion rates suffer. You actually end up booking less business than you should. So now let's talk about what you will need in order to know how to get these resources in balance. So in order to inform you to properly balance your resources, there's really four basic models you'll need. The first of these, which is foundational to the other three, is a full funnel conversion model, which is derived from actual historical full funnel analytics. Secondly, you will need a rep capacity model that helps you better understand how much rep time is required to ultimately generate a deal, how many reps you would need to meet your goals for the year, et cetera. You'll want a lead ratio model that allows you to understand how many leads you need to generate a single deal. And then by inference, what kind of top of funnel support is needed in order to maximize rep productivity, basically make sure you're in balance, right? And you'll need some kind of top of funnel cost attribution models to understand how much investment would be required to generate the appropriate number of leads for optimal productivity of the sales team. You'll also want a derived middle funnel model, typically SDR capacity model, so you can understand how much resource you would need to apply there. Because of time limitations, I'm only going to touch on the first three of these today, though. So the foundational model is what we call a full funnel conversion model. This model depicts the conversion dynamics from lead all the way to deal, including through every stage of the bottom of funnel. These models are informed by actual historical data from full funnel analytics. And ideally, these models can then be sliced and diced by various dimensions that are important to your business, whether that's kind of sourcing channel or strategy, segment, sales team, geo, whatever, right? I'm going to show some examples now of what these full funnel models look like. So let me share my screen. Okay. First of all, this is a spreadsheet version, right? This is a model template that we use with all of our customers to effectively build their plans, their forward-looking plans based on historical actuals. But what a full funnel conversion model is exactly that. In this case, it's organized by channel. So paid search, we call them funnels. Paid search funnel, organic funnel, AE prospecting funnel, partner referral funnel for this particular company. For each of these funnels or channels, we have the historical conversion data, right? Paid search, generates so many website sessions from paid search. We understand what percent convert into these low intent leads, what percent into high intent leads, how those leads convert into first meetings, how the meetings, discovery meetings convert into opportunities, and so on down. So this is what a full funnel conversion model is. And it's really jacks or better that companies need to have this type of comprehensive insight into how their business works in order to make smart decisions on how to affect things in the future. I'll give you another example of that using our software. So the Scale Matters software is basically a full funnel analytics platform. So here you can see kind of automatically it calculates all of the funnels, in this case, funnels by channel. You can see the various lead counts, meeting counts, conversion rates, et cetera. You can also go into more detail. In this case, it's kind of a summary. So you see it goes from pipeline opportunities to deals. If you want to drill down onto the opportunity stages, has that capability as well. So the spreadsheet I showed you, we actually populate that spreadsheet for our customers from the software, from the actual analytics that the software calculates. So that's a couple examples of what a full funnel conversion model might look like. Tim, you want to I guess I'll stop sharing and you can go back to the screen for Model 2 on rep capacity. Yeah, so it's critical to know rep capacity, meaning given our sales process and funnel conversion rate, see how that all that funnel stuff comes into play here, how many person hours are consumed by a rep in order to yield one deal, which then can be translated into how many deals a rep can reasonably be expected, over a given period of time, let's say a year. To construct these models, we actually start by capturing the AE time spent on the various activities in each stage of the pipeline, according to what our sales process is. You get this information, quite frankly, by simply interviewing a representative sample size of reps or sales managers and asking them to describe the activities and the time spent on them at each stage of the sales process. It's not perfect, but we have actually found it to be quite good enough for the purposes of these kind of analytics. If you want a little more confidence, perhaps you could leverage some of the data in something like Gong, which is sort of capturing the meetings and emails and stuff like that. Or even ask somebody, you might want to do this once a year, ask a couple of reps to track their time over the course of a handful of pipeline opportunities, right? You don't want to go overboard with this because you'll just get, revolt. But you can get good enough with this sampling and this interviewing and surveying. By understanding the time spent per stage and then running that through the full funnel conversion model, you end up with total AE time required to produce a deal. And then you should make sure that your model also accounts for time spent on admin work or time spent prospecting, depending on what the expectation is at your business. So now we're going to take a quick look at a rep capacity model. Okay, this is one that we use commonly with our customers. We're going to start, let me make this a little bit bigger, so I know it's already impossible to see. We're going to start here, which is for each stage. These guys have six stages, including closed one. In the discovery stage, it basically constitutes doing a discovery and qualification meeting. What we capture from our customer salespeople is that they spend about 10 minutes doing email and coordinating to get that meeting set up. And then they spend 1 hour between prep time and actually having that initial discovery meeting. So for each opportunity, they spend basically 1.17 hours in stage one of effort on stage one. In stage two, which is where they typically do a demo, again, about 10 minutes in coordination, but actually spend 2 hours prepping for and then doing the demo. So 2.17 hours per stage two opportunity. What we then do is we take the conversion rates, funnel conversion rates, which are up here, and we use those to calculate how many records do we need to get into each stage, or opportunity do we need to get into each stage in order to produce a deal. So what that ends up is one deal requires 1.05 to reach stage 6. It requires 1.32 opportunities to reach stage 5, and so on back to where basically what this says is you need 6.85 opportunities, this customer does, to translate to a deal. Multiply that by the number of hours spent in this stage, 1.17, says there's 8 hours total spent across these opportunities in stage one to produce a deal. The net of all of this for this customer is an AE spends about 33 hours in order to produce one deal. So then we say, okay, how many hours does the AE have in a year? And in this particular model, we start by saying, look, they're working 47 weeks a year at 40 hours. There's a general human inefficiency tax we place on it of say 15%. There's an internal tax. This is time spent on CRM, hygiene, or other stuff that's not really spent on the customer. So we've said, look, it ends up that the rep has about 1,400 hours a year to actually sell and or prospect. In this case, the customer does expect them to do some prospecting, spend about 25% of their time prospecting. And so the net that's available to focus on running the playbooks through the pipeline is 1,057 hours. Divide that by the 33 hours. It basically suggests that a rep who's fully ramped should be able to close about 32 deals a year for this customer. By the way, just so you can see the impact, let's say you don't have them prospect. So you set that at 0. It says the rep should do 42 deals a year, right? So very easy to sort of model this stuff. This is an example of a rep capacity model. So let's go back now to the third model, which is lead ratio models. In order to understand the top of funnel investments that are going to be required to be in balance with the bottom of funnel, you need a way to calculate the ratios of lead to deals, and then multiply that by the annual deal capacity of a rep times the number of reps. And that gives you kind of how many leads do we need to be fully in balance with the size of our sales team, right? So we get this ratio simply by taking the inverse of the product of the full funnel conversion rates from deals back up to lead counts. And once we understand the lead capacity required to be in balance with the sales capacity required to meet our goals, then we would start to look at cost attribution models to basically understand how much dollar commitment is necessary then to drive that lead capacity, if you will. On this next slide, this is what we mean by inverse of the product of the conversion rates. A simple funnel model, 5% of leads turn into scheduled disco meetings, 70% of those actually take place, 40% of those move into pipeline ops, and 30% of those are won. The lead to deal ratio is simply the inverse of the product of these 4 conversion rates. And so what that, if you do the math, it ends up like 238.1, meaning in this example, we need 238 leads generated in order to produce 1 deal. And let me quickly just show you this calculation stuff automated with our software. Am I still screen sharing?
I see your screen. I see the rep capacity.
Oh, okay. So here we go. This is lead to deal ratios, right? And so since the software has all of the full funnel stuff, again, it's very easy to do that math of creating the product of the conversion rates and doing the inverse of that. And so we slice it very granular. You can see we're looking at different qualities of leads in terms of these lead zeros, 1s and 2s, different channels of sourcing. So this data starts to become pretty informative in terms of how many of each type of lead do you actually need to generate a deal. So, I mean, you could do this stuff by hand, but it gets hard to get real granular and to slice it by various dimensions if you're doing it all manually. So let's go back. That's some examples on lead ratio models. So top of funnel cost attribution, next to last slide here. Once you understand these leads that are necessary to support the sales investment in achieving goals, then you back into the investment levels by using a top of funnel cost model. You'll also need these cost models to do any ROI analysis. And as you're probably aware, it's fairly straightforward to attribute program spend, such as Google ads or LinkedIn ads or trade shows expenses. It's less straightforward to attribute the cost of people against top of funnel dimensions. And this is predominantly a marketing staff attribution issue. With that said, similar to the way we do the sales rep models, we think it has been pretty effective to just interview or survey the team once per quarter and ask them how they would attribute their time across whatever dimensions you are considering, right? Maybe you want to understand how much of their time goes to organic content creation versus running ad campaigns or something like that. So get them to basically tell you. You could also periodically just actually ask some of the folks to track their time for a week or so. Again, you don't want to become oppressive with trying to get perfection here, because you can get good enough to give you the directionally correct insights that you'll need. And finally, then what you would do is you take these cost models and then translate them into a cost per lead, which can be multiplied by the required lead counts to arrive at total top of funnel investment that's required to be in balance with this investment you're making in the sales team. So sorry I ran a couple minutes over. Hopefully we've helped you today understand the concept of making sure your resource capacities are balanced across the entire funnel, and the negative impact of not being in balance, namely a whole bunch of money wasted and alarmingly reduced bookings. We've showed you some models that you'll need to have in order to be able to properly size your investments. We gave you glimpses into our software of how a lot of this stuff is automated there. Hopefully you'll leave here kind of better equipped to maximize efficient growth for your organization by ensuring that you've got funnel resource balance. Happy to stay on for a minute or two if anybody has any questions. Otherwise, you can certainly reach out to us offline. Great. Well, thanks for your time, and hopefully you found this valuable, and please come join us on our future ones as well.
Thanks, everybody.